Miami's Aston Martin Residences. This 66-story luxury skyscraper at 300 Biscayne Boulevard Way, the first residential tower on Earth to carry the Aston Martin name. The one with a $59 million penthouse, delivered with a one of 24 Aston Martin Vulcan supercar parked inside. The one with a private superyacht marina at the base and a helipad on the roof. The one that sold 99% of its units before construction was finished. That building has already started falling apart. On November 24, 2025, a metal cap covering one of the building's structural cables broke off the exterior and landed on the pool deck below. Engineers documented defects across nearly every system in the tower. Concrete spalling, exposed rebar rusting in the open salt air, loose pieces on balconies hundreds of feet above the sidewalk. Residents say they will not step outside onto their own terraces. The building opened in April 2024. It has been occupied for less than 18 months. And the developer has now been accused of running what the lawsuit calls an immense shell game in the weeks before handing over the keys. So how does the most prestigious branded luxury tower in Miami start shedding pieces of itself before the warranty has expired? But first, let's go back to when this building was supposed to be the future. This is the Aston Martin Residences, 66 stories, 817 feet tall, located at 300 Biscayne Boulevard Way in downtown Miami, right at the mouth of the Miami River where it meets Biscayne Bay. One of the most valuable stretches of waterfront real estate in all of South Florida. The site sat empty for years under multiple failed proposals known collectively as the Epic Two, before a single Argentine businessman arrived with a concept nobody had ever attempted anywhere in the world. The developer was German Condo, an Argentine businessman whose family had built one of the largest supermarket chains in South America. His company, G&G Business Developments, purchased the site for roughly $125 million. And then he made the call that defined everything that followed. He licensed the name of Aston Martin, the British automaker whose cars start at $200,000 and whose name for over a century has meant one thing: precision engineering. The Aston Martin Residences would be the first residential building on Earth branded by the automaker. A superyacht marina at the base, a helipad on the roof, an infinity pool on the 55th floor, and at the very top, a $59 million penthouse spanning 3 floors and roughly 20,000 square feet, sold with the very last Aston Martin Vulcan ever built. 820 horsepower, all carbon fiber, one of only 24 in existence anywhere on planet Earth. The supercar was parked inside the apartment as a permanent fixture, a trophy welded into the architecture itself. The pitch worked. By 2022, the developer was reporting 99% of units sold and more than $100 million in revenue in just the first 2 months of the year. Buyers were told the Aston Martin name on the door meant the same obsessive standard behind every wall. Nothing skipped, nothing rushed. Among the promises printed in every sales brochure was exclusive access to a private beach club at the Ritz-Carlton Key Biscayne, a reserved stretch of sand, a private ferry to the island, a lifestyle befitting the address. What no brochure made clear was the single most important fact about the entire project. Aston Martin's role ended at the logo. The automaker was not financing the tower, not managing construction, not signing off on a single concrete pour. The brand collected its licensing fee and walked away before the first resident ever moved in. That distinction would matter enormously when things started to go wrong, because the name that sold every unit in this building would not appear on any of the legal filings when the lawsuits began. The building opened on April 30th, 2024. In March 2025, control of the condo association transferred from the developer to the residents, which is standard procedure under Florida law. The developer runs the board during construction and initial sales, then hands governance to the people who actually live there. What the new board did next is what changed everything. They hired Epic Forensics and Engineering, an independent structural consulting firm, to conduct a full property condition assessment. Epic's job was simple: inspect every system in the building and report exactly what they found, with no obligation to protect anyone's reputation. What came back was not a punch list. It was closer to an autopsy of a building that had only existed for 18 months. Engineers documented concrete cracking and spalling throughout the entire tower, unsealed holes in the building envelope, reinforcing steel left exposed to open Miami salt air, defects in the masonry, defects in the stucco, defects in the waterproofing, defects in the fire protection systems, defects in the seawall along the Miami River. The report flagged problems across nearly every major system in the building. Not a few items missed during a rushed inspection. According to the engineers, these were problems embedded in the structure from the start. The balcony conditions were the most immediately alarming. Engineers found spalling and erosion along the slab edges, with loose concrete at heights where a falling piece travels hundreds of feet before it hits the sidewalk below. On November 24, 2025, a metal cap sealing one of the structural cables inside the building's concrete broke away from the exterior and landed on the pool deck. Nobody was sitting there. That was luck, not engineering. The post-tension deficiencies were the part that made structural engineers cold. To understand why, you have to know how a tower like this is actually held together. Steel tendons run through the concrete of every floor slab, pulled tight under thousands of pounds of force. They work as long as the concrete sealing them stays intact. Once that concrete cracks and breaks away, the cables are exposed. Steel corrodes. In a dry climate, that process is slow enough to catch as a maintenance item. In Miami's salt air, sitting directly on the edge of Biscayne Bay, the timeline collapses. Corrosion moves fast here, and it moves inward toward the tension holding the floor above your head. The Surfside parallel writes itself, even though nobody at the lawsuit wants to say it out loud. Champlain Towers. South collapsed in June 2021 and killed 98 people because of decades of accumulated structural deterioration in the post-tension system below the pool deck. The Aston Martin Residences is showing similar warning signs after 18 months. The buildings are not identical, the timelines are not identical, and the engineers are quick to point out that imminent collapse is not the diagnosis. But the failure mechanism is the same family of problem. And the residents inside the Aston Martin Tower know it. If a brand new billion-dollar luxury tower already showing Surfside pattern structural defects sounds like the kind of story you want more of, hit subscribe right now. This channel digs into the buildings nobody else is willing to fully expose, the ones where the warranty is still active and the lawsuit is already filed. Now back to the story, because the part that should make every potential buyer angry is what the developer was doing in the weeks before he handed over the keys. When the new Condo board took control in March 2025, they did not just hire structural engineers, they also hired forensic accountants, specialists who trace where money actually went. What those accountants found, according to a separate lawsuit filed in February 2026, targeting the developer's financial conduct, was what the association's attorneys described as an immense shell game. Here is how it worked. Before handing over control of the Condo board, the developer awarded long-term service contracts to companies owned or controlled by German Condo and his associates. Building management, concierge services, security, valet, cleaning. Every operational expense the building would need to run for years into the future was locked in with vendors who answered directly to the developer himself. A security vendor with little established track record received a contract worth close to $800,000. The lawsuit alleges it was awarded without competitive bidding. A concierge company invoiced more than $34,000 every single month with documentation so thin the association could not confirm whether any of those services were ever actually performed. The association was charged $70,000 in rent for a management office inside the building, in a unit owned by a Condo-controlled entity, despite free office space being available elsewhere in the complex. The contracts were signed in the days immediately before the developer handed over control, some of them in the exact week before the new board took possession. And when the new board did take possession, the computers that Florida law requires to be transferred with full financial records had been wiped clean. Years of accounting data, vendor invoices, service confirmations, gone. Erased before the residents who actually owned the building could see what their own money had been spent on. The lawsuit seeks more than $5 million in damages and a full accounting of every dollar that moved through that building during the developer's control of the association. The association's attorney, David Haber of Haber Law, described it plainly. He told reporters he had never seen this level of brazen self-dealing by a developer in his career. And David Haber has been representing Florida condo associations against their own developers for decades. When that lawyer says he has never seen this before, the residents have a real problem on their hands. The developer's response to all of this has been to deny the claims and accuse the condo owners of dodging their own responsibility for what happened to the building. They say they used the very best contractors they could find. They say the condo owners are looking for somebody else to blame. The lawsuit is active. The case is ongoing. The residents are still paying the inflated service fees while the courts decide who actually owes who. Michael Diaz Jr. is a Miami attorney. He bought a unit at the Aston Martin Residences and was elected president of the Condo Association after the developer handed over control. One of his first calls after taking the role was to the Ritz-Carlton Key Biscayne to arrange the exclusive private beach club access that every single buyer in the building had been promised in the sales materials. He expected to work out logistics. He expected to confirm dates. He expected to set up the private ferry the brochure had described. Instead, when he described the promised arrangement to the hotel staff, their response stopped him cold. The Ritz-Carlton had no idea what he was talking about. No beach club partnership, no private ferry, no reserved stretch of sand for Aston Martin residents. None of it. Diaz said afterward that the only thing right about what he had described to the hotel was that it was a fairy tale, nothing more and nothing less. Every buyer in that building had been sold the same LIE. The marina was supposed to be operational. The helipad was supposed to function. The private ferry to Key Biscayne was supposed to run on a schedule. According to the association's lawsuit, none of it was properly delivered. The amenity package that had justified the luxury price point was largely fictional. Now think about what that means for the person at the very top. The $59 million penthouse, nearly 20,000 square feet across 3 floors. The Aston Martin Vulcan parked permanently in the living room as a trophy. But the balcony was not supposed to be a trophy. The balcony was supposed to be real, livable space. The best view in Miami. The thing you actually use every day when you live at the top of the most exclusive address in the city. Residents say they will not step out onto it. One balcony was visibly drooping, chunks of concrete sitting loose on the surfaces, shattered glass with no explanation. The building was shedding pieces of itself, and the people walking on the sidewalk below had no idea what was hanging over their heads. Unsealed concrete, chunks of it falling off balconies to the ground, leaving holes in the slab. Reinforcement steel exposed and rusting in open Miami salt air. They paid for total luxury. They got the opposite. And no one who sold it to them is being asked to account for the difference. If this kind of luxury real estate meets corporate betrayal story is what you come to this channel for, hit subscribe so the next one lands in your feed automatically. We cover the buildings before the lawyers manage to seal the records. Now back to the story, because the part that should worry every potential buyer in America is the part nobody at the developer wants you to understand about how branded real estate actually works. One logo, over $1 billion in sales, zero legal obligation to the people who bought into the building. That is not an accident. It is how branded real estate is structured at every level. The automaker, the fashion house, the hotel chain. They license their name. They collect their fees. They walk away before the first resident moves in. The developer takes the legal liability. The owners take the bill. The brand takes the exit. In Florida, construction defects in new buildings are not the exception. They are the expectation. The Florida statute 558 that the Aston Martin Condo board used to sue the developer exists specifically because so many new buildings in this state fail their owners within the first few years. When things go wrong, the brand is not named in any lawsuit. The brand does not write any check. The brand bears no consequence for what was built in its name. A logo is not a guarantee. In the branded real estate business, it was never meant to be. The Aston Martin Residences is not the only example. It is not even the only example in Miami. Across town in the Edgewater neighborhood, owners at Missoni Baia, a luxury tower branded by the Italian fashion house Missoni, sued their developer over 76 alleged construction defects, cracked foundations, water intrusion, inoperable elevators. Different brand, same outcome. David Haber, the same attorney representing the Aston Martin Association, also represented the Missoni residents. He described the pattern plainly to reporters. He called it a vicious cycle that does not end. He said virtually every new high-rise condominium in Florida goes through it. Not some, not most, virtually every single one. This was not a construction failure. It was a system that rewarded branding over engineering, a system that protected developers behind LLCs and licensing agreements, a system that handed the bill to the people who believed the pitch and punished nobody for building it. The Aston Martin name on the door did not guarantee anything except the licensing fee that went to Aston Martin. The $59 million penthouse buyer is in the same legal position as the buyer of the cheapest unit in the building. Both of them are on the hook for the structural repairs the developer should have made before he ever handed over the keys. The same model is already approved and selling across South Florida right now. There are branded towers under construction in Sunny Isles, Brickell, Edgewater, and Fort Lauderdale carrying the names of fashion houses, sports car manufacturers, and hotel chains that have nothing to do with the actual construction. The buyers do not know which one is going to fail next. Neither do the brands whose names are on the doors. A $1 billion luxury tower with the most prestigious name in performance engineering on its front door. 66 stories of branded prestige sold to 99% occupancy in 2 months. A $59 million penthouse with an 820 horsepower Aston Martin Vulcan parked inside as decoration. Concrete falling off the balconies into the pool below within 18 months of opening. Post-tension steel corroding in Miami's salt air on a Surfside pattern timeline. A developer accused of wiring his own service contracts the week before handing over the keys. A beach club at the Ritz-Carlton that never existed. A private ferry that was a fairy tale. A condo board paying out of their own pockets to fix a building they did not break, while the brand whose name justified every premium dollar collects its licensing fee and pretends none of this is happening. The Aston Martin name is all on the door. The Aston Martin name is not on any of the lawsuits. And somewhere right now, another fashion house, another car company, another hotel chain is signing the licensing paperwork on another branded luxury tower in Florida, betting that the residents will pay for whatever goes wrong long after the developer has cashed the check. Because the same question that built the Aston Martin Residences is the same question every branded luxury tower in America is built to answer. How much can a logo sell, and how little does the logo have to back up when it sells it?